Today I'm reviewing Ozma of Oz. This is the third book in the Land of Oz series by L. Frank Baum, which I am reading out of this collection here, The Complete Stories of Oz, published by Wordsworth Editions. So I've got a lot to say about this, but I guess maybe a few quick programming notes or by way of introduction. First of all, I'm doing this as a buddy reads with Dane Reads. We're reading through the Oz series together. At the moment I am filming this video, I have not yet seen his review of it. But as soon as I do see his review, I'll link to it in the description down below so you can go ahead and check that out. Secondly, this is my second attempt to get through this volume. I tried 5 years ago. I got about halfway through, and then I lost interest. So I mentioned that because I've got some knowledge of a few of the stories that are coming in later, and I might draw on that in the course of this review. In addition to drawing on some knowledge of the later stories, I'm also relying on the Wikipedia entry for this book, which I'll link to in the description down below. And Tor, the publisher at Tor.com, did a series of reviews of all the Oz books a number of years ago, back in 2009, by their reviewer Mary Ness. And I've enjoyed their reviews immensely, and I found them very insightful. And I'm going to be drawing on some of her insights from her review, which I will also link to in the description down below. Okay, right, Ozma of Oz. This is now the third book in the Oz series after The Wonderful Wizard of Oz and The Marvelous Land of Oz. Now, my childhood connection to this is the Disney movie Return to Oz, which I've mentioned before when I was talking about The Marvelous Land of Oz. This it's a movie I saw many times as a child, but I've come to appreciate that not everyone is familiar with this movie. I think you saw it if you were a kid in the 1980s and you watched the Disney Channel a lot. But if you are familiar with that movie, then you'll have some connections with this story, because that movie was based off of books 2 and 3 in the Oz series, The Marvelous Land of Oz and Ozma of Oz. And Ozma of Oz is where the Disney movie Return to Oz got most of its plot points from. Some of the characters were from The Marvelous Land of Oz, but a number of the plot points about the Gnome King and the oh, by the way, I'm spoilers. I'm gonna talk through the plot and spoil everything. But eggs being poisoned to the Gnome King, the woman who changes her heads, which was Mumby in the Disney movie, but was based on a character in the Ozma of Oz, a different character whose name I forget. I think it starts with an L. Anyways, the Wheelers. These creatures who go around on 4 wheels is from Ozma of Oz. The desert that turns you into stone or sand if you touch it figures in Ozma of Oz. I think it was that desert was set up in the first Oz book. I forget if they set up the fact that it was death to touch any of it. But at any rate, crossing the desert plays a part. The hen, the talking hen, Belina. Yeah, what else? TikTok. TikTok is in this book as well. So, if you're familiar with the Disney movie Return to Oz, you will recognize all of those things I just mentioned. If you're not familiar with it, apologies for wasting your time, but this is where all that comes from. So it was interesting for me to read this and being like, okay, that's where the Disney movie was getting that from. Anyways, the story starts off with Dorothy. Now, Dorothy had not been in the previous book, The Marvelous Land of Oz. In fact, Dorothy had gone back to Kansas at the end of the first book, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. So now we've got to get her into the land of Oz again, which was a difficulty that we skipped over in the second book, but now we got to get back to that difficulty. So in the first book, of course, Dorothy was picked up by a cyclone. In the second book, Dorothy is washed overboard with a ship. Dorothy has a rough life, but you know you've got to get her lost in nature somehow for her to wash up on Oz's shores again. So Dorothy ends up getting washed overboard on the ship she's on with a chicken coop. So she's with the chickens. And then when she gets to actually not the land of Oz, but the land of Ev, one of the lands bordering the land of Oz, the chicken can talk because now they're in a fairyland. So according to fairyland rules, the animals can talk, which is, if anyone is keeping track out there, it's one of many inconsistencies because Toto didn't start talking in the first book, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. Dorothy has also, in between the books, picked up a dialect, or as Marie Ness put it, little girl speak, where she is very. She is. So Dorothy's dialogue is now written with a lot of missing vowel sounds or a lot of missing syllables and an apostrophe there to indicate that she's not speaking her words properly. So that's, I don't know, arguably annoying or arguably endearing, but an inconsistency from the earlier books. So she and the hen are in this land, and they meet Tick-Tock, which again, if you're familiar with the Return to Oz Disney movie, you know who Tick-Tock is. But Tick-Tock is a machine man. Now, we've already had the Tin Woodman in these books, who was made completely out of tin, and Tick-Tock is made completely out of metal as well. But the Tin Woodman was a munchkin who had his limbs replaced by tin. Tick-Tock, by contrast, has been just designed as a machine. Apparently, he's one of the first depictions of a robot in literature. I don't know what the first one would be, but Tick-Tock is one of the first. And it's interesting because Tick-Tock is a machine, he's not alive. And he says he's not alive, and the other characters agree that he's not alive. Which is interesting, because, like what really is separating him from the Scarecrow, or, some of these other characters from the Marvelous Land of Oz that are just creatures that came to life because of this magic powder that was sprinkled on them. I mean, it almost reminds me of like those Data episodes from Star Trek, like what does it mean to really be alive? And I think that is intentionally ironic in these books. It's part of the joke that the other characters don't consider Tick-Tock alive, even though he's no less organic than the Scarecrow. But the distinction is that he was just manufactured, and he was given the distinction of being a machine. He was created to be a machine. He was called a machine, which makes him different, I guess, than the other cases. So throughout all this, Dorothy discovers that she is in the land of Ev, which is not the land of Oz. It's the land of Ev, which is separated from Oz by the deadly deserts that nobody can cross. So this is something that Wikipedia points out. This is a shift now in the way these stories are set up. All the Oz stories are seem to me to be all journey stories. So the characters go on a journey from point A to point B and encounter a lot of magical creatures and obstacles along the way. But in the first book, Oz was the dangerous place that you had to go around, and there were strange creatures and dangers around every corner in Oz. Starting with this book, though, there's a shift where now Oz is the safe place. Oz is, the home base, where all the creatures live happily ever after. And when they are going to have adventure or encounter things that are dangerous, those are now going to be outside of the land of Oz. So this is now Ev, which is distinct from the land of Oz. It's another inconsistency for people who are keeping track. But Mari Ness over at Tor.com makes a point that this is something that L. Frank Baum really had to do, because he's already given everybody in the land of Oz a happy ending. So there's no more adventures left to be had in the land of Oz without trying to hit the reset button. I don't know, actually. I shouldn't say that, because there are quite a number of adventures left to be had in the land of Oz, if the number of books in this series is any indication. Yeah, so we'll see how this plays out in the other books. But a lot of the books are going to be taking place outside of Oz now, where characters journey outside of Oz. So Will Dorothy is in the land of Ev. She looks out and she can see Ozma of Oz crossing over the desert. Now the desert is apparently a desert that nobody can cross, but they've got this magic rainbow, which was given to them by Glinda the Good, I think. So the rainbow acts like a magic carpet, not like a flying magic carpet, but like one of those red carpets that unfurls before you. So it keeps unfurling as they're walking around along it, so they can cross the desert on that way. Oh, speaking of Ozma of Oz, this is a good time to mention something that I probably should have started out the review with, which is, this book is called Ozma of Oz, but that's not really an accurate title. Ozma is not really the hero of this book. This is the first book that she figures prominently in since she was introduced at the end of the previous book. The end of the previous book, of course, she got changed from being Tip, the boy, the mischievous boy, into Ozma of Oz. Now, I feel like, I don't know, let me know how you guys feel about this, but I feel like Ozma and Tip are not the same character. I feel like Tip was a mischievous boy, whereas Ozma is more like a benevolent ruler. Although, as Marie Ness at Tor.com points out, Ozma makes a lot of blunders in this book. She comes into the land of Ev without knowing what's going on, and then she gets it into her head to rescue the princesses and princesses of Ev, and just barges into the Gnome King's kingdom without doing any research. Those Tor.com reviews were written in 2009. She makes some snide remarks which are meant to bring to mind the Bush administration and the quagmire in Afghanistan and Iraq. Just plunging into areas where you don't know anything about them. The Tin Woodman is back, and the Scarecrow is back as well. The Tin Woodman and the Scarecrow were Baum's most popular characters at this point, in part because of the stage play. And the Cowardly Lion is back. Cowardly Lion was not in the previous book. He just got left out. And then there's a new character. There are a number of new characters, actually, but the Hungry Tiger of Oz. Now the Hungry Tiger of Oz is I remember when I was in elementary school. I think I mentioned this before, actually, in a previous video. I remember when I was in elementary school, looking at the library and seeing the book, The Hungry Tiger of Oz, and that was like my first clue to the fact that there was this whole Oz series, because I knew that that wasn't part of the the story I knew from the movie. That this was a new character with new stories. That book, The Hungry Tiger of Oz, is much later in the series. It's actually not in this edition because it's one of the books that the publishers published after L. Frank Baum had died. But the point being, a number of the characters introduced in these early books will later go on to get books of their own, like The Hungry Tiger. So, yeah, they they go in and they meet the Gnome King. Um, yeah, I think Wikipedia points out that the gnomes in this series are spelled Nome instead of Gnome, and they're not like like those gnomes you see in people's yards. Like small little creatures who live in the woods. They're more like rock monsters, or rock creatures. This edition I have here is unfortunately without any illustrations. But the book is in the public domain, so the illustrations are easy enough to find on the internet. In the Disney movie Return to Oz, the Gnome King was definitely portrayed as a rock monster, whereas the illustrations that you can see accompanying this book, he looks a little bit more, I don't know, like a little dwarf or something. He's described in the text as a Santa Claus type figure. So yeah, what else do I want to say about this book? The adventure takes place in the land of Oz, and then, sorry, the adventure takes place in the land of Ev, away from Oz, and then they go back to the land of Oz, and then they meet a whole bunch of the previous characters who had been in other books, but didn't have time to be incorporated into this book. So there's a reference to Ginger, the girl who had led the girls' rebellion in the previous book. So she's now a dairy maid, or she's working on a farm with a milk cow, and she's married. And her husband has a black eye because he milked the wrong cow. So it's showing that she's still bossing people around even though she's no longer in power. And Jellia Jam, the maid from the Emerald City, makes an appearance, and the Wogglebugs College. Yep. So yeah, I thought this was a clever little line. They come to a large building covered with flags and bunting. "I don't remember that building," said Dorothy. "What is it?" "This is the College of Art and Athletic Perfection," replied Ozma. "I had it built quite recently, and the Wogglebug is its president. It keeps him busy, and the young men who attend the college are no worse off than they were before. You see, in this country are a number of youths who do not like to work, and the college is an excellent place for them." So a little bit of a satirical jab at the type of people who attend college. This book was published in 1907, so maybe that was an attitude towards college education at the time. Although notice from that quotation that Ozma is speaking like she knows everything. You see, in this country, there are a number of youths who do not like to work. The college is an excellent place for them. They are no worse off than they were before. This is a different character than Tip, right? Tip being from the character from the Marvelous Land of Oz, who it turned out at the very end we found out that that character was actually Ozma all along with a gender swap. Except it seems to me like L. Frank Baum just couldn't keep it the same character, consciously or unconsciously. And then Dorothy. Oh yeah, sorry. Jack Pumpkinhead is there. Who else makes a cameo appearance? Yeah, and this will be something which continues in the next, at least the next few books, is the list of cameos at the end of the book from all the characters that L. Frank Baum couldn't find a way to fit into the adventure, but who he wants to remind his readers, don't forget, these characters are still in the Land of Oz, they're still in continuity. The reviewer at Tor.com, in one of her reviews, criticized these extended roundups at the end of the book. I don't mind them so much. They're a nice way to just kind of be reassured that the author hasn't forgotten about these characters that you spent time with in previous adventures, even though they don't really serve to further the plot. And then at the end, there's a magic belt, which Dorothy has gotten from the Gnome King. Now, Dorothy can't take the magic belt back with her to Kansas because nothing from Fairyland works once you take it outside of Fairyland. But Ozma is going to keep the magic belt, and Ozma also has a magic picture. When she looks into the picture, she can see Dorothy. And every Saturday morning, if Dorothy wants to visit the Land of Oz, Dorothy will give her some sort of signal. That struck me as a little bit strange because it meant that Ozma has to sit there all morning. I don't know why they couldn't say, between 10 o'clock and 10:15, give me the signal if you want to visit the Land of Oz. But I suppose you have to give the story some leeway. So, the first story, Dorothy got picked up by a cyclone. The second story, Dorothy got washed off a ship in the middle of the ocean. But from now on, presumably, there's going to be no more dramatic natural disasters for Dorothy getting her to the Land of Oz. She's just going to be able to signal to Ozma, and then Dorothy will be able to come back to the Land of Oz. And in fact, the very next book is Dorothy and the Wizard in Oz, so she's coming back in the next book already. But we'll deal with the next book in the next book. Dorothy, in spite of everything that happens to her, keeps a very stoic attitude towards everything. Like when she's washed off of the ship and she's in the middle of the ocean, she's just kind of, saying, well, this is another pickle I find myself in. How do I ever get myself into these things? I suppose that I will get very wet, or I don't know what I'm going to do when I get hungry or something. Like she mentions all the difficulties she's in, but she's just mentioning it in a very philosophical way. There's no sort of panic or sense that her life is in danger, which a real person would have in these situations. But that's very much in keeping with the first book in the series. And in fact, I read on Wikipedia that L. Frank Baum's influence was Alice in Wonderland. And the Alice in Wonderland books, which I've got laying around here somewhere. Oh yeah, here it is. Read these recently on this channel. Alice has very much the same attitude. So I guess maybe that's what L. Frank Baum was drawing off of. Once you accept that it's that kind of story and that you don't expect realism in a story like this, then that and a whole lot of other things you can let go. Okay, I think I've rambled on long enough here, so I will finish off this video, and next off will be Dorothy and the Wizard in Oz, which, according to the schedule Dane and I have set, that will be in another couple weeks.